here's where I come back on this, right? Is that we get wrapped up in the whole, they're calling us all racist. They're not. The DOJ report on the Phoenix Police Department says that they regularly used excessive force, they unlawfully detained people experiencing homelessness, that they targeted minorities, that they violated the rights of protesters, they discriminated against people with behavioral health disabilities. Here's where I want to correct some of what's happening here is we're generalizing, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's easy to do, and I don't blame you for doing it, but we're generalizing. I want you to think about this. Suppose you work for a company, all right? And in that company, you've got some people who work at the entry-level positions, all right? Just name a company for me, Joe. This is just off the top of my head.
Apple.
Okay, Apple. Great. So Tim Cook is the head of Apple. Thank you for naming a company I knew the head of. Appreciate that. Very good. So Tim Cook is the head of Apple. You've got some entry-level positions there at Apple, too, right? Interns?
Sure.
You've got probably some graphic artists. Not all just engineers. You've got lots of people doing things. Well, let's say that you've got interns, and a few of those interns start harassing people, right? Let's say that some of the interns are getting a little too friendly with some of the graphic artists, and the graphic artists are getting uncomfortable. And the graphic artists go to their boss, who happens to be an engineer, and they said, I don't feel comfortable. The engineer, who's not really a great manager, but is a great engineer, goes, they'll get better. But it doesn't stop. It continues. And finally, the graphic artist goes to HR and says, listen, I'm being harassed on the daily. And HR goes, okay, well, we're going to take a look at that. And nothing really comes of it. Does that mean that Tim Cook is pro-sexual harassment?
Yes. No, it does not mean that.
Of course it doesn't mean that. So when I hear people saying things like, well, Jerry Williams was a police chief and she was female and she's black, so how could they possibly be racist? Jerry Williams was a good police chief. She's been a good cop her whole life. I don't think she was putting in training manuals target minorities. I think what's happening is we go, listen, we're going to go to this area, we're going to go to that area, we're going to go to this area, we're going to go to that area. And I think our own implicit biases probably weighed in and they weren't trained out. Sometimes training, in this case, I believe this to be the case, sometimes a lack of training to accommodate for our own biases means a missed opportunity within training. So when they say that the police force trained people, what they're really saying is the police force didn't untrain us. They accepted biases as part of the training.
Or there could have been decades of training that were told to them that they just accepted.
Sure, and passed it along.
And the reality is the training should have evolved. I mean, just because we did something in the 50s and 60s doesn't mean we should be doing it in 2024. Doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. But it could be leading to lawsuits for the department,
Sure.
Or maybe there's a better way to do it. Now, I want to nitpick with you just a little bit
Go
here.
ahead.
You're very, very right that there are a lot of people out there. I'm going to way oversimplify this and say that there are cop lovers and cop haters as a result of yesterday.
Fair. I appreciate you admitting it's an oversimplification, but yeah, good.
There's not a lot of people who are objectively looking at this and saying, what can we do to just make the city of Phoenix better? And we need the cop haters and cop lovers to sit down at the table. But the public sat there after this report came out yesterday, and the cop lovers, as I'll identify them, were saying, like you mentioned, it's a hit piece. Most of the cops are good people. Then you have the cop haters, I'll say, more liberal kind of groups.
Yeah.
They defended the DOJ. They said, yeah, Phoenix cops are a bunch of racists. Look what they're doing to the homeless, black people, Latinos, indigenous.
Yeah.
The reality is we have this big opportunity here in Phoenix, and the cops had that list of the 5 goals that we went over that seems to me to be a lot about box checking, but it misses the bigger picture.
Because it talks about we're going to enhance enforcement, more arrests, more technology, right?
Yeah, they're out of touch with the community, though. So the cops are thinking about reducing fentanyl, trafficking by their 3%. You've got a Latino population that's inherently distrusting of the cops, though, that are putting the uniform on each day, trying to keep them safe. What can these groups and Phoenix Police do to come together?
Thank you.
And find a way to get the community's trust back? And it takes both sides. It takes people in the middle. It takes everyone out there. You brought up there's not a lot of people these days in school who sit there and go, you know what? I want to become a police officer. I want to become a firefighter or an EMT. Kids now want to go off and they want to be an engineer at Apple.
Of course.
Or they want to, come up with some sort of drone or something like that could maybe help the police, but they don't want to put on the uniform. And what we need is to inspire these young men and women to want to grow up and become firefighters, become paramedics, become cops. So you asked, why are the reactionary members of the community missing the point? And I'd say, what can police and the community do better? They can listen to each other and not just say, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, and point the finger and do that. But if you actually work together, you could get somewhere. But until they do that, all we're going to be doing is coming up with these lists that kind of check the box, like Phoenix Police came up with earlier, and they're going to be